All right, so today I got deadlift to start it off. I'm gonna hit a top set of 5, followed by a giant set of deadlifts, close grip bench press or close grip pin press, something like that. I gotta check again. Some single arm overhead pressing, which is something I haven't done in a while, but I really like that exercise, especially to build big shoulders. I made that video, Grow Your Shoulders. I talked about that exercise a little bit. So I'm gonna do that after the pressing, and then some high box step ups. I can't really get that high because I just use my plates, my bumper plates as my box, and I can't stack them up super high, but some step ups on the plates. But last week I hit 676. Yeah, 676 for 5 on the deadlift for my top 5. My lower back is still pretty fatigued from that. I haven't felt that unrecovered ever in my entire life, in terms of it's systemic fatigue, but it's also local fatigue on the lower back. And I think that was a rep PR that I hit, 676 for a set of 5. I don't know if I'm going to be able to repeat that today. I'm doing these warm-up sets, and we'll see what I can get up to for my top set of 5. But I don't always talk about it, but I've talked about it before, not forcing progressive overload, just letting the adaptations occur. I've talked about the barbell medicine guys. I've talked about this before too, but you don't force progressive overload. You don't lift heavier weights and then get stronger. You get stronger and then you lift heavier weights. You know what I mean? So, but it's just so hard mentally to be yeah, I know I hit 676 for a set of 5 last week. I need to progress, and I'm really going to see how I feel with these warm-up sets and try to be smart about not pushing it if my back's not feeling it. But I just have that urge. We all have that urge to just progress, even though it's a bad idea. You know it's a bad idea. But yeah, we'll see what I end up doing today. This is what's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plates, so that's 585. That was a warm-up that I just did. I'll throw a quarter on right now for another warm-up, see how that feels, and then probably make my decision after that. So yeah, that's the plan for the day. I got some questions that I'm going to answer. A lot of questions on the nutrition video that I just put out the other day. So I'm going to go through those questions, try to find some good ones to give you some answers to. So that's it. That one felt really good. I'm going to go up for a small jump for another warm-up and then decide what my top 5 is going to be. All right, 655 here for a single. This should go well based on that other warm-up I just did at 635. Yeah, that felt good. Let's put 677 on. Let's do it. All right, so I did it. 677. I put the little greens on, that 1 pound plates on outside of this. So let's do it. That actually went surprisingly well. Man, I'm happy with that. All right, I got to get my giant set in, take some weight off, and hit my giant set of, I think, 10 or 12 reps. I got to check. All right, so moving on to the giant set here. I'm going a little bit lighter than what I prescribed to do for the giant set, just because after a couple of minutes now standing around changing weights, my lower back is tightening up a little bit. So I might actually cut this giant set short a little bit. If I irritate my back, I want to be smart. I'm playing basketball tonight, so I want to play well. And I don't want to have the same feeling over the weekend that I had last week after hitting that 676 set last week. I just hit 677, so I went up 1 pound, so plus the giant set last week. So I didn't remove any of the reps from the giant set last week, so I might do that if I feel like it would be a smart thing to do. But I'm going to get started on this. I'll get some questions answered in between sets. Yeah, I think I'm going to cut this short. I'll probably just do a couple more reps. How many hours before bed do I typically eat my last meal? That's really going to depend on just a lot of factors. how tired I am, so how early am I going to go to bed. So like I think in that video it was like 8:45 or 8:50 when I had my last meal, which was just, I think it was just a shake and some blueberries or blackberries. But depends how tired I am, depends how quickly we're able to get my daughter down, depends how many chores we have to do before it is bedtime, like cleaning up the kitchen, cleaning up kids' toys, whatever chores that need to be done, taking out the trash, because sometimes we have more to do, sometimes we have less to do. But I would say like within an hour probably. So assuming I'm in bed at 9:15, I'm probably having that last meal at 8 p.m. at the earliest, and probably 8:45, 8:50 at the latest. So like within an hour most likely. So the way the app is set up is that you have a waking meal, then you have a bedtime meal, so that's 2 out of the 6. Then you have your normal like lunch and dinner, so that's 4 out of 6. And then basically it's like 2 snacks, one at like mid-morning and one like late afternoon. So that's kind of the way it's set up. And it's all based on like the time of day you're training. So that's what I really like about the diet that I'm on. So the waking meal is like within the first 30 minutes that you wake up. That's when you have that. And then within like an hour before going to bed is when I have my last meal. What do I do for trap and neck work? This question gets asked all the time. I know for people who have followed me long enough, you already know what my answer is. But honestly, dude, you're looking at it. Heavy pulls, violent pulls. That's kind of the way I categorize it. I guess I'll give a little kind of explanation for it. So the traps, anytime you're pulling something heavy, your traps, you're put on a stretch, but they're also contracting at the same time. Really good stimulus for muscle growth. And then Olympic lifts, you're getting the same thing. Immediately when you pull the bar off the floor, they're going to stretch, but then you're also going to contract them and finish. You're going to finish the rep of an Olympic lift, whether it's a snatch or a clean, with a violent pull. So that's like, according to the effective reps model, that is both heavy pulls, deadlifts, RDLs, snatch group deadlifts, and Olympic lifts. They fit into the model of the effective reps model. So they're like really good ways to grow your traps. It's just heavy pulls and explosive pulls. That's the way I think about it. Overhead pressing is great for them. Anything overhead because your traps, they act on the scapula. So if you elevate your scapula, which is something you do when you shrug, something you do when you press, you elevate your scapula. That's the traps acting on the scapula, and it's heavy enough and it's with high enough intent. That's going to place a pretty strong, potent growth stimulus on the traps. Yeah, I'll call it there. I got about half of the giant set done, but I got to be smart. I don't want to screw myself over for the rest of the week. So I'll move on to the pressing now. I got 6 reps of the giant set at a little bit lighter weight than I wanted to use, but dude, that's the price you pay when you hit a PR, a rep PR, and you blow your load in the middle of a training block when you don't really need to. But anyways, good training still. Let's move on to the upper body stuff. All right, moving on to close grip bench here. I got for sure 2 working sets. I'm going to go 330 for this first set, and then I might do a third set based on how the first 2 work sets feel, but I'm going to go to 1 to 2 RIR for all of the sets. So these are going to be pretty tough sets. That was more like a 0 RIR, but still a good set. Got 7 reps there. I'm going to go down a little bit in weight for my set 2. All right, so many of you guys asking me why I don't eat vegetables. I don't eat vegetables because I don't like the taste. The only vegetables I'll eat would be a potato, a baked potato. I don't eat mashed potatoes. I'll eat a baked potato, and I need to put butter on it. I do like baked potatoes with butter and cheese, sometimes bacon if that's available. But potato, it's the only thing I'll eat. And then I will put spinach in a shake if I do like a blender bottle, not a blender bottle, but like a real blender, and I make a real shake. I'll put spinach in a shake. That's the only vegetables I'll eat, but never liked vegetables. Always pissed my parents off. Because when I was like 4 years old, I refused to eat vegetables. And I would tell my parents, well, when I'm 5, I promise I'll eat my vegetables. And I turned 5. wouldn't eat my vegetables. I said, I promise when I turn 6, I'll eat my vegetables. To this day, I don't eat vegetables. I just don't like the taste of vegetables. I've never really gotten to the point where I can like force myself to eat vegetables. I understand it's healthy for you. I understand the nutritional value. That's why I get the greens powder. So shout out to Legion for having the greens powder that I can put in my shakes several times a day to get those nutrients. All right, moving on to set 2, 320 here. Last rep right at 0.24 meters per second, so that's probably right at my 2 RIR, honestly, so it's a pretty good spot to end at. I'll do a third set. I'll go 315. How do I go about teaching someone an exercise for the first time? Do I demonstrate while talking about it? Do I have them perform the exercise while cueing them? Wondering your approach and what you have found works best for you. Yeah, another answer of it depends. I know that always sounds like a cop-out, and a lot of times it is, but it depends who the athlete is, what their experience level is. So when you say teaching an athlete an exercise for the first time, are we assuming that they have never lifted weights ever in their life? Or is it someone who has lifted weights but very informally with their friends at like a Lifetime Fitness? What's their training age? What exercise are they doing? For most exercises, kind of regardless of what their training is, regardless of what their training age is, if you tell someone you want them to back squat or deadlift or whatever the exercise is, most people at least have some concept of what that exercise visually should look like. And so if I'm teaching someone to back squat, if I'm teaching someone how to back squat, I'm probably not going to demo it for them. I'm going to assume they at least know they know that they put the bar on their back. They know they squat down the bend of their knees and their hips to a certain depth, whatever the depth they think they're supposed to be getting. So I'm not going to demo that for them because they probably know what it should look like in some capacity. I'll probably just have them, honestly, a lot of times I just say, all right, we're going to back squat. Go ahead, show me your back squat, and I'll just interject as necessary. If I see something I don't like or if I see something I want to correct, I'll correct it. And then, again, depending on what their training age is, there's going to be more or less corrections for that individual. Now, when you're working with like a large group, like when I work with athletes on campus, volleyball, softball, basketball, whatever it is, so something for like the Olympic lifts with a group like that, I will demonstrate it. Usually what I'll do is I'll demo several good reps with like realistic weight on the bar. After that, after I demo it, then we'll talk about it for a minute or two. And this also depends on like how complex the actual movement is or what variation or what drill of the movement they're doing. We'll talk about it, and then I'll kind of say, all right, break up into your groups. You go ahead and do it. I'll walk around and I'll make necessary corrections that I have to make. So that's kind of the process. But then as a coach, you just have to use prudence, understand who you're working with, how many people you're working with. Are they grouped according to their body size? Are they grouped according to their strength level? But I guess, it depends on the exercise. Now, something like a bench press, you can't really fuck up a bench press. The only thing that I would tell someone is like, hey, don't use the suicide grip. Make sure you touch the bar to your sternum. Make sure you have your 5 points of contact. But these are things like I'm just gonna tell someone, hey, lay down and bench press, and I'll tell you something I don't like that I want you to fix. Same with a back squat. Now, something like a front squat or deadlift. This is a good example. Deadlift. I follow the five-step deadlift setup and execution that Starting Strength has popularized. So what I'll do for them is before they've ever deadlifted before, I'll say, all right, walk up to the bar. I'll get their stance correct, feet right underneath the hips, toes pointed out a little bit. Put the bar, make sure the bar is over the middle of your foot, and then I just say, hey, follow my instructions precisely. Don't deviate from my instructions. So walk up, bars over the middle of your foot, bend over at the waist. Do not bend the knees. You can flex your spine a little bit. Grip the bar right outside of your shins. Don't let the bar roll forward or roll away from you. The bar stays over the middle of your foot. Step 3, bend your knees to bring the shins to the bar. Again, do not roll the bar into your shins. The bar stays in the same spot. Bend your knees, bring your shins to the bar. That's step 3. Step 4, squeeze your chest up to get some thoracic extension. Flatten that back out. And then step 5, push the floor away, keeping the bar over the middle of your foot or right up to your legs the entire time. So there's certain exercises that just have different procedures, I guess. You just got to be a good coach and know when to use which. All right, let's get this last set of bench press done, 315. This is 95 pounds, by the way, just in case anyone was wondering. 4 10s on each side. The dumbbell by itself is 15. So I think I got 8 reps with my right, 7 with my left. I'll do one more set here, and then I'm going to move on to the step-ups. All right, yeah, so I got a lot of questions asking me to give my take on why... Shut up, Russ. Got a lot of questions asking me to give my take on why collegiate strength and conditioning no longer uses the Olympic lifts as much as they once did. Part of it is the transfer portal. So, like, there is an argument, all of the good arguments that oppose using the Olympic lifts all come down to circumstance, because there's no good argument based on merit, based on like the stimulus that one can achieve per unit of time with 1 rep of an Olympic lift compared to any other quote substitute or replacement exercises. So like the good arguments that oppose the Olympic lifts are based in circumstance, like the transfer portal. If you have guys coming in for just 1 year, you got to get like good quality training with them for a very limited amount of time. And so like it comes down to, do you think it's worth spending a certain amount of time teaching them to be relatively proficient at the movements, especially if you have a short amount of time, your training blocks are very short. Maybe you're only training for an hour a day, 2 times a week during season. So like all of that stuff makes sense for why someone wouldn't implement the Olympic lifts. But on the broad scale, I do think there's a lot of coaches that honestly do not understand like a movement analysis of the Olympic lifts. Like the Mike Widango thing is a prime example. So like his analysis of the movement is that it's a quasi RDL, a shrug, a catch, and a quarter squat. That's kind of like his limited understanding of what the Olympic lifts are. He like doesn't acknowledge that there's a relaxation component. He doesn't acknowledge that there's triple flexion. He doesn't acknowledge that you're creating propulsion onto an external body of mass, only to have to yield that mass within milliseconds. Doesn't acknowledge the range of motion demands on various joints in the body, shoulder, hips, knees, and ankles, and how quickly you have to get in and out of those end ranges of motion, but also how quickly you have to get in and out of those end ranges of motion under load and under stress. Doesn't really acknowledge the fact that you're training the elastic qualities of like certain muscles in deep ranges of motion, which is something that is missed in most training programs, because people do plyos, and that's usually at longer muscle lengths to train the elastic qualities in longer muscle lengths. So I think like the broad understanding of the Olympic lifts comes down to people just reciting triple extension, power production, and rate of force development. And if that's like all you see in the Olympic lifts, then it's really easy to understand why someone would say, well, shit, if that's all the Olympic lifts really provide, the catch doesn't provide anything unique, then it's really easy to understand why someone would say, well, we're just going to do trap bar jumps. We're just going to do med ball throws. Med ball throws suck, by the way. They're so ineffective, and don't even get me started on med ball throws. They're not even close to you can't even come close to achieving a similar level of stimulus with a med ball throw than an Olympic lift or like anything else. Anyways, but it's really easy to see if someone has a limited understanding of, like, they can't analyze the movement and the stimulus that's actually occurring on the body that's going to drive adaptations that aren't quantifiable, then it's really easy to see why someone would choose other exercises over the Olympic lifts. A few coaches made it popular to oppose the Olympic lifts back in like 2018, 2019. Then there's like a lack of critical thinking because at the time, the people who oppose Olympic lifts, they really could say that like they're opposing the mainstream. They're sticking up to the man. They're being more efficient with their time. There's like all these different tropes regarding that. Let me do my next set here, and I'll continue talking about this. Let me move on to step-ups, and I'll elaborate on this during step-ups. But yeah, so since there's like a broad, I think, misunderstanding of what the Olympic lifts are, what the movement analysis is, there hasn't been a very strong, very quality, good pushback against the opposition of Olympic lifts, which is why I make so much content about them, because I really do want to influence people into incorporating them into their training routine, because I do think there's a lot more value in them than what like mainstream strength and conditioning sees. There aren't very many people who have good arguments in favor of Olympic lifts. There was a time where I didn't incorporate Olympic lifts because I saw people like Max Schmarzo, I saw people like Nick DeMarco, I saw whoever it is that are like anti-Olympic lifts. I don't even want to call them anti-Olympic lifting, but these are people who oppose implementing the Olympic lifts unless you're like an Olympic weightlifter. I saw them argue against it, and they were arguing against triple extension, rate of force development, and power production, basically saying that you can get those qualities more effectively trained doing other things. And since I didn't have a good argument against it, I was just like, well, I guess they're right. But then I stopped including the Olympic lifts in my training. I'll keep training. I apologize. I'm doing a density set, so I'm trying to keep the training going, not take very long breaks. But since I didn't have a very good argument in favor of the Olympic lifts, because all I knew was triple extension, rate of force development, and power production, I'd hear these arguments that oppose it, and I was just like, well, I guess they're right. But then I stopped including Olympic lifts, and I started doing a lot more trap bar jumps, med ball throws, other loaded jumps, and I just knew something was missing. So then you just get a little bit more introspective. You start thinking about the lifts a little bit more, start analyzing it a little bit more, and you're like, because everyone knows when you do like one hard single rep of a clean at whatever intensity, 80%, that feels different than doing a trap bar jump with 80% of your back squat max, because they don't even have like real ratios. Sometimes they say to use a percentage of your body weight. Sometimes they say to use a percentage of your back squat max. It feels different when you do a clean at the same relative intensity. And then you just have to think about, why does it feel different? So you just start digging, and you start understanding it more. You start recognizing different things, different unique qualities that the Olympic lifts provide. Let me get my next set in. It would be unfair to me to say that like other strength and conditioning coaches in college are lazy and that's why they don't incorporate them. But it is true that it is hard. It's hard to learn. If you're a coach and you can't perform them very well, you're going to lack competence and confidence teaching someone else to do an Olympic lift if you can't do it very well for yourself. But no, when you're working with a large group of people, it is a lot easier to just say, hey, we're not going to clean. Just throw 225 in the trap bar, do some jumps with it. It is a lot easier to do that. It takes a long time to develop proficiency in yourself. And then if you're coaching other people, it takes a long time to develop proficiency in them. I also think there's a lot of pushback from football coaches and football players. I know because I experienced this firsthand. There's a lot of pushback because these people don't really understand strength and conditioning. They don't understand physiology. They don't understand biomechanics at any level. And they're gonna say like, why are we doing this clean? Like this, I'm not an Olympic weightlifter. You're gonna hear things like that. Weightlifting is a sport. I'm not, like, my sport is running and cutting and jumping, and it's not doing Olympic lifts. And like, I do think this is lazy, but coaches will say like, well, I guess they'll just kind of like give into that and say, yeah, I guess you're right. We're not going to do a clean because I want to appease you. Now, I do think that is lazy. I do think there is a problem in strength and conditioning where people will just abandon values and principles just to appease certain coaches, but at the same time, they're the ones cutting the check and they're kind of in charge of your job. So I do understand it from that perspective, but maybe I can give a more elaborate take on this in like its own separate video. Maybe let me know if you want me to do that. I'll write some thoughts down and I'll expand on my take on this subject matter. I'm gonna finish my sets here. I'm gonna do one more set. I'm gonna shut the camera off and then finish it after. I got more to do. I don't want to keep yapping. I got to get this done. So I appreciate you guys watching the video. Let me know if you want me to expand on my thoughts on why people don't use Olympic lifts and strength and conditioning in college as much anymore. So see you guys.